Welcome to Written in Voice, an intimate space for words, pauses, and truth, to be heard on Spotify and YouTube. A new episode about once a week, exploring emotions and human experience. All my podcasts are also available in French. Today's episode is called Why I Chose to Forget Everything. I passed my baccalaureate at a very young age, literary stream with music and Latin. Creativity has always been woven into my life. I have always had an insatiable hunger to understand, to find my own place through what I read or did. So I took in everything that could nourish my mind. And above all, I needed to write. I was already writing as a teenager. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. The first poem I decided to publish years later was in English. I wrote it when I was about 21. After my baccalaureate, I was admitted to Hypokhâgne, that prestigious school for France's intellectual elite. There, you study everything at once: history, geography, philosophy, literature, languages, and so forth. Except I only had 2 hours of English per week, and that was my main interest. We were expected to read dozens of books each week, often 2 or 3 at the same time. It was like an endless feast, but one we were forced to devour without really enjoying. Reading was no longer an act of love. It was too much about swallowing knowledge and not enough about applying it to our own lives. I remember my philosophy teacher telling us, "You are the elite, yet you are nothing." It was meant as a challenge, but for me, it had the opposite effect. I thought, I would rather be nothing than a manufactured elite. Nothing, but free. Nothing, but faithful to what I truly love. What I wanted was to immerse myself in the English language, that very language that had been with me in songs, with its specific rhythm, its music, its way of reframing the world. And as soon as I could speak it a little, I was already transcribing song lyrics for the pleasure of it. At Hypokhâgne, you skim the surface of many things. You dig deep too, but some topics were of no interest to me. And I felt scattered, my passion diluted in a notion of prescribed knowledge. So I made what seemed at the time a reckless decision. I left Hypokhâgne and went to university. At university, I could finally focus on what mattered to me: English, literature, linguistics, translation. 2 years later, when I saw my former classmates again, their English was weaker than ours. They had been stretched too thin by a program that was far too broad. Leaving Hypokhâgne had been the right decision. But the feeling of saturation never left me. I had built up an immense store of knowledge: the great philosophers, the major linguists, writers and poets. I had moved among them like familiar companions. I knew the systems, the structures, the broad outlines, and often even the fine lines. And yet, one day, I chose to forget. There is this phrase by André Malraux which states that culture is what remains once you have forgotten everything. It says that culture is not the servile memory of dates, quotations, and names. It is a deep imprint, an invisible architecture, a cast of mind. It shapes our gaze, our reflexes, our judgments. even when we have lost the precise details. And on that point, I agree. I was determined to give it a go and find myself, which implied becoming simple. And becoming simple can only happen once you have absorbed a great quantity of information, digested it, and set it aside. It was time for me to leave all this culture aside in order to find myself. Because even the finest culture can become a filter. It makes you see the world through the eyes of others. It dictates to you, sometimes unconsciously, what is intelligent to think. And I wanted to draw my own map, to follow my own path, trace my own lines, listen to my voice without it being overlaid by that of others. And so I decided to forget, to stop seeking to quote, to stop accumulating, to stop asking myself, what would so-and-so say? What would another think? Because often quoting is not thinking, it's more to do with memory. And yet, that forgetting came at a cost. By detaching myself so much, I truly did forget a great deal. Sometimes I tell myself I should have kept more formal knowledge. I remember certain things, a few ideas, but so little compared to all I once knew. But I gained something else. That forgetting forced me to search within myself and to dig deeply. And I discovered that I could think for myself, that I could trust my own reasoning, even stripped of its references. I learned to write with my own words, to create with my own sensitivity, to understand that my value is not measured by the number of books I have read, but by what I can give here and now. And perhaps you might say to me, but what about people who have never read, those who had neither the interest nor the opportunity? I believe they learnt with a different kind of intelligence, the intelligence of life, which has nothing to do with book learning. You can be extremely cultured and yet not know how to live. And you can also possess a rare form of intelligence that knows where it is going without formal knowledge. Of course, there are endless combinations between book knowledge and the intelligence of life, as well as the absence of both. I wanted to adapt formal, book-based culture to the intelligence of life, because life is not made of quotations. It is what we do from day to day, and how and why we do it. Have I found myself? Yes, I have. But it took time. For a long time, I concentrated too much on others and not enough on myself. Now, I think of myself first. Creation is vital to me. So is communication. I love helping, encouraging, passing things on. That is why I made this intimate podcast, because I know I'm not alone. Sometimes we think we are different. We never are entirely. And if I chose to forget everything, it was not to erase my story. It was to walk with a lighter step, to hear, at last, my own voice, and to know how I perceive the world.